friends, my name is Lexi, and today I will be sharing with you some Greek mythology retellings I'd like to read soon. Let's talk Greek. My name is Lexi and welcome back to my channel. We are back on my study table. Today is going to be kind of a bit more of like a rambly sit down video, so I highly recommend that you get yourself a cup of coffee, you get really cozy, and let's go ahead and chat about some books. So I actually really love Greek mythology. I was definitely that girl in high school and in college who was kind of obsessed. I actually even considered getting a degree in the classics, and I was always really obsessed with learning about all of these Greek myths growing up, like in English class and things like that. I loved English class to absolutely no one's surprise. And that love really intensified when I got a little bit older and I read a very famous book called The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. So I actually purchased this book about 9-ish months after it was first published, maybe a year after it was first published actually, because I know that it had just started to win some awards. But I read this before anyone who I personally knew had heard of the book, and I picked it up kind of on a whim. I actually didn't know anything about this, but I was browsing the shelves of Barnes & Noble when I saw that this was the winner of the Orange Prize for Fiction, and I was like, well, that's really interesting that it won an award, and that was all it took. Like, I didn't know anything about it. I knew that I liked Greek mythology, but I didn't know that this was a love story. I didn't know going into it really anything other than this was about Patroclus and his relationship with Achilles. I ended up reading this entire book in the spans of a day, and it completely destroyed me. I read it during a time when I really needed to read it. Sometimes I feel like books find you when you need them to be found. You know what I mean? And so it's just kind of become like the book of my heart. It's definitely like my favorite book, I think, of all time, which is a really big statement to make. Years and years later, Circe was actually just getting released, and this is when there had been like a lot of buzz and hype around Song of Achilles, and I actually went to the very first signing of Circe on Madeline Miller's tour. As you can see, I loved this book as well, and she actually also signed this book. It says, "For Alexandra, my future best friend, best wishes, Madeline Miller." It just meant so much to me to meet her and to get her to sign it, and then again, I completely fell in love with this book as well. And that's just really what solidified my love for Greek mythology retellings. Last year, I feel like my knowledge of Greek myths kind of grew when I purchased and read Mythos by Stephen Fry, which is absolutely brilliant, and I loved it so much. And then, of course, I did read my very first Percy Jackson book. The more I consume Greek mythology, the more I'm convinced that I just am absolutely obsessed with it. I forgot to also mention this that I wanted to. I also happen to have a necklace, and this necklace is of Calliope, who was the muse of writing, and I literally never ever take this necklace off, ever. This was a graduation present when I got my master's in library science from my parents, and it's like my favorite thing in the entire world, and I always wear it. Recently, I also just finished reading 2 Persephone and Hades retellings, A Touch of Darkness and also Neon Gods, and Neon Gods is now one of my very favorite books of all time. And so because of all of these reasons and because of my love for Greek mythology, I've decided to kind of put together a little bit of a standing TBR for all of the Greek myths that I would like to get to. And then I think I'm probably going to pick a couple of titles from this list and actually vlog it in the spring. So if there are any books that you would particularly like me to pick up so that you can hear my thoughts on them, please let me know down in the comments below. And that way I'll make sure that I prioritize reading and vlogging those. I think that's it for my long and rambly intro though. So without further ado, let me get into all of the books that I would like to read that are Greek mythology retellings. Okay, let's start with something that I'm sure no one is going to be surprised with, and that is I'd like to finish the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. I absolutely love how accessible Rick Riordan is making these retellings to kids. I feel like he's really sparking a new love in multiple generations growing up of how wonderful myths are. And not only do I appreciate that he's done this with Greek mythology, but I also love that he has also given a voice to so many other people so that we can hear their myths from their cultures as well. Paula Santiago is a great example, but there are so many that I really want to read that aren't just Greek myths. But anyway, Anyways, this is what I really want to focus on. Last year was the very first time that I read the first book. If you haven't read Percy Jackson, it's about a boy who discovers that he is a demigod, and it's about him going to a camp called Camp Half-Blood, where all of the demigod children go and they essentially learn how to connect to their heritage and their powers, and they learn how to battle, and it's really incredible. He goes on a quest, he meets friends along the way, and it's just a brilliant story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars, and I'm excited to kind of see where his storyline continues from there. So yeah, that's all about that one, but I feel like most people know about Percy Jackson. Okay, let's continue on with YA. So I feel like a lot of people, especially on BookTube, have heard of this, but this is Lore, and this is by Alexandra Bracken, and again, it is YA. I've heard this described as the Hunger Games meets Greek mythology. This is following 9 gods and goddesses, and to pay for their past sins, for all of the people that they have wronged, because, okay, you guys, like, it's a fact that like the gods were pretty messy, and they didn't always make choices that were in everyone's best interest. A lot of the times they were selfish or greedy, which I think is why they're so interesting and relatable. They're not perfect. They're just these wonderful beings with all of this power who are interesting and dramatic and messy. And so every so often these gods and goddesses are placed back, and the people that they have wronged get to hunt them down. And it's a little bit like a game. I think they can actually team up with other gods and goddesses and try to survive. That's all I know. I think it's going to be really fascinating. I've wanted to read this since it came out, and it's definitely going to be a priority this year. Next up, I have here The Lovely War, and this is by Julie Berry. This isn't a retelling so much, however, it does have the Greek goddess Aphrodite involved, and she's essentially explaining why love is so much more powerful than people really give it credit for. And she's talking about how this epic love story that happened, I think around World War II, really shaped a lot of lives. So that's all I know, but I think it's going to be wonderful. This is, I think, YA, and I'm really excited to learn more about it. I'm intentionally kind of going into this book not knowing a lot, but I've heard wonderful things about it. And also, like, I'm a sucker for a love story. So, okay, next up, I had to mention Stephen Fry's next 2 books. These are not Greek mythology retellings. These are just the Greek myths retold. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that these are Stephen Fry's like findings and interpretations. Essentially, like, they're his take on the Greek myths, but they're also like the takes that most historians take on the Greek myths, if that makes sense. What I loved about Mythos was that in addition to it just being wildly entertaining and a beautiful, very aesthetic read, Stephen Fry also has so many different footnotes that he includes, where he includes like pop culture references and how certain Greek words or myths then took a play in how we formulated the English language. And I just found all of these different facts so fascinating, and it really added to the Greek myths as a whole. I highly recommend Mythos, and I had to pick up his other 2 books. So the first one I have here is Heroes, and we are talking about the heroes in the Greek myths. So Hercules would be a great one. I honestly love Hercules so much. I think that maybe that is actually where my love for Greek mythology started. And then it turns out, like, years later, I'm basically Meg in all of my relationships.
My friends call me Meg. At least they would if I had any friends.
Aren't you a damsel in distress?
I'm a damsel. I'm in distress. I can handle this. Have a nice day.
So, but yeah, so we will be following all of the Greek heroes in this story, and I'm really excited to learn more about it. And then here I also have Troy, which I'm really excited about, because I think these are some of the stories from the Trojan War. That's really all I know, but I'm really excited to pick this up and read this as well. Next up, and one of the reasons why I actually wanted to do this TBR, is that Madeline Miller is coming out with a new story. And I'm so excited. Actually, I saw that she was also potentially going to be working on a Persephone and Hades retelling, but the one that I want to talk about is Galatea. I think that is how you pronounce it. So I'm just going to read this. It says, in ancient Greece, a skilled marble sculptor has been blessed by a goddess who has given his masterpiece, the most beautiful woman the town has ever seen, the gift of life. Now his wife, Galatea, is expected to be obedience and humility personified, but it is not long before she learns to use her beauty as a form of manipulation. In a desperate bid by her obsessive possessive husband to keep her under control, she is locked away under the constant supervision of doctors and nurses, but with a daughter to rescue, she is determined to break free whatever the cost. The publishing for this date, I believe, is July 4th of this year, 2022. I am so incredibly excited to get anything new from Madeline Miller. I think she is brilliant. And also, as someone who has met her and gone to one of her book events in person, she is so lovely and sweet. So I am very excited to get this. I'm probably gonna do an entire reading vlog dedicated to it. Yeah, I'm really excited. Next up is a book that I have on my 22 books that I want to read in 2022. I actually think Lore was on there as well, and that is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint, and this is considered an adult literary fiction. This is a retelling of Ariadne, and I think you would be more familiar with the story of the Minotaur, who is Ariadne's brother. I just love the way the synopsis kind of starts because I feel like you get kind of a sense for how dreamy the story is going to feel. So it says, Ariadne, princess of Crete, grows up greeting the dawn from her beautiful dancing floor and listening to her nursemaid stories of gods and heroes. But beneath her golden palace echo the ever-present hoofbeats of her brother, the Minotaur, a monster who demands blood sacrifice. The short version of this is she decides to sell out her brother for a hot prince who comes and tries to beat the maze, and then I think she tries to run away with said hot prince. I have to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't do that to my own broski, but you know, I don't know. I'm really interested to kind of learn about her story and learn about her brother more, and then learn about this handsome, dashing prince. I hope he was worth it. Most boys are not. That's that one. Oh my gosh, it says sister, lover, traitor, hero. Hero. Maybe her brother sucks. I don't really remember his meth, to be honest. Anyways, let's move on. The next book is a book that I feel like has gotten quite a bit of hype on Bookstagram, or it did like when it first came out, and that is Natalie Haynes' book, 1,000 Ships. Also, it's blurbed literally by the queen, Madeline Miller, and it has such a beautiful cover. I was really drawn to this, and it just, I don't know, I have good like hopes and feelings for this book in particular. So this book is kind of like a feminist retelling of all of the women who were involved in Troy. Obviously, the Iliad was written by Homer, and all of the perspectives were really written by the men because those were the people who were fighting in Troy, right? But this particular book is actually giving a voice to all of the women who were affected. So we've got like Helen of Troy. I want to say like Cassandra's voice possibly is in here, but don't quote me on that. And then all of the women who were greatly affected by this war. I feel like the perspectives of the women are actually going to be as interesting or more interesting because the entirety of the war was sparked by a woman. Helen of Troy, you know, the face that launched 1,000 ships. And so it'll be really interesting to like learn more about her perspective in this reimagining. I think it's going to be really fun, and I have very high hopes for this book. And then finally, the last book I have here is called Daughters of Sparta, with this lovely buy one get one 50% sticker from Barnes & Noble. And this is a novel by Clair Haywood, again with a really striking and beautiful cover. So this book is another book that I'm really interested in because we are specifically following Helen from Helen of Troy's voice. And I find it interesting that she's the main reason for this war. I mean, it wasn't her fault. She was literally kidnapped by Paris, but she was the main reason for this war, or she's like what sparked the war. And there aren't really a ton of retellings from her perspective. So I'm really excited about this. This is all about the war and essentially all of the events leading up to the war from Helen of Troy's perspective, and we're also following her sister's perspective as well, which I'm really interested in because I don't think I've ever read anything about Helen of Troy's sister. This is a reimagining between the two women's perspectives and their voices. I think it's going to be really interesting, and I can't wait to read this. I will also be reading this year, if all goes according to plan, the Iliad by Homer, as well as the Odyssey, also by Homer. My two translations are pretty cool in my opinion. This particular one is by Peter Green, and I've been really enjoying his take on the tale. So if you didn't know, this is a really old tale, and there are so many different translated versions of this. This particular one is kind of a newer one, and I've really been enjoying how accessible it seems, but also just the way Peter Green is interpreting the text. So if you were looking for the the Iliad, I highly recommend Peter Green's version. And also, if you are interested in reading The Odyssey, I highly recommend this one that I picked up from Emily Wilson. I haven't read it yet. However, it is a text translated by a woman, which is really, really rare. Emily Wilson has said that she has strived to give women a little bit more power in this translation while still respecting the original work. And I'm very, very interested to kind of see how she does that. I think this is going to be fantastic. Also, if you didn't know, the Iliad is the story of the Trojan War, but not the entirety of the war. It's kind of like towards the last couple of years of the war. And then this particular book is following Odysseus on his journey back from the Trojan War to his wife, Penelope. And I think, you guys, that is it. Those are all of the books that I would like to read that have something to do with Greek mythology or Greek retellings. However, if you know of any more, please, please, please let me know down below in the comments. I am always excited to add more titles to my ever-growing TBR, so I would love to know if you have any recommendations for me. And again, if there are any books that you would really, really like me to read so that you can learn more about it, or you think that I would like from this list, please let me know down below in the comments, because I am going to be doing like a dedicated reading vlog to Greek mythology retellings, and I'm really, really interested in learning your opinions. If you have made it to this part of the video, please leave me the sun emoji, because it's a little cloudy today and I would love a little bit of sun in my life. I think that's it for now though, you guys. So until next time, book lovers, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book, and I will talk to you very, very soon. Bye!
Always think of you when spring comes, like it's something in the air at that time. Don't know why. Always dream of you when spring comes. It's like the heat on my skin takes me back to the time met you.